So single use and disposable together can mean a lot of different things, and I think it depends on your process. So uh, I'm seeing a huge trend towards single use, like liners, bag liners for vessels, which are very helpful. There's a lot of different types of technology out there. I'm by no means an expert in single use technology, but single use filtration lines, single use materials, even down to pre-packaged, pre-sterilized, single use, obviously like small containers for sampling. So I think that there's a lot of different ways on the line that you can incorporate single use materials. They help to reduce cleaning and sterilization. And that's why they've become so popular, right? So you don't have to have, well, you have to have different measures in place if you're using a liner, a single-use disposable liner in a production vessel, formulation vessel, than you would to actually clean the vessel if you're doing it using the vessel itself, stainless steel, right? So the degree of cleaning, the cleaning validation requirements shift. Sometimes they reduce, right? And so there are pros and cons for that. There are things that go wrong with single-use liners and bags and stuff like that. A lot of people are using single-use bags to hold the final material that is then tubed into the production vessel, right, itself. And so you can go right into sterile filtration, and then the whole line gets disposed of without having cross-contamination, without having hard pipelined aseptic connections. And so there's a lot of different advantages. But then the types of controls you need to put in place are a bit more upstream. So incoming inspection, obviously you need to supply, get good qualified suppliers and manage those suppliers. Not all suppliers are created equal. Not all sterilization cycles on single-use materials are created equal. You see some of them that they'll reprocess materials and then they degrade before you even use them. I mean, there's a lot of things to consider when you're trying to implement single use, right? You can't just say, oh, this sounds good, I'm gonna go to it. You need to understand where you're using it, how it affects the product, what are the extractables, leachables, or what happens from the materials to your product, how they interact. There's a lot of different things that you need to consider even when you're doing aseptic connections of the fill line to production, because you need to validate that. You need to understand how those are being used. The throughput, the flow, everything changes when you're starting to implement a totally new system. And then waste is also a big issue. So, it does kill the little eco-friendly, soul that I have deep down inside as we see the whole industry go from what I thought was fantastic, strong, high quality grade stainless steel vessels and pipelines and all of that, shifting towards plastics that contain chemicals, forever chemicals, blah, 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 but also that get put into earth and wasted. So, there's a lot of sustainability conversations happening around this, but there are advantages, and I see a shift within industry going towards implementing these as effective contamination controls. They are, quite effective when done properly. So just some things to think about, when you're implementing them. And then the last thing I'll mention, all the failure modes, all the things that can go wrong with bags, with double liners, with final product bags, with sterile filter lines, operator errors, what happens when they get dropped. I mean, there's a lot that can happen that goes wrong with these things. Don't underestimate implementing those types of controls as well on your CCS.
Yeah, we're at a particular stage where we're even on the fill finish side, all the way from the surge tank, which is a single-use bag, all the way to the tubing, and the filling nozzles are all single-use. So when the fill is over, you take everything and you throw it out and you reline and you put it all back together again. Yeah. And we've gone TFF, the tangential flow filtration, besides the containers and bags, all. But here's a very practical one that I'd like to bring out. What about all the vents? What about all the air filters, all the nitrogen filters, all the gases that we do? We still have people out there with filter housings and cartridges or whatever, decorating the whole facility. Using a single-use disposable just on a vent filter, just on an air filter or a nitrogen filter, makes all the sense in the world. and you could see it. It's in place, whatever. So that was one thing I'd want to encourage you. But I want to go back to Vanessa, and I'm going to ask you that whole question before of running the ACR down in the HVAC below the ISP, FDA, and the
Mm.
ASHRAE design. That means that we're not running that particular room, suite, or whatever at the same conditions. I don't know. That doesn't make me feel good. Tell me more. Say something.
Well, I don't know where the question's coming from the audience and why they would
Yes.
want to do that. I think putting the controls in place to make sure that that room is functioning on its own and different from the other parts of the facility, I don't know if that's even worth the effort. But I think, a lot of my experience comes from supporting, sterile injectables, other small molecule cell and gene therapy. I can imagine, Herman, that there are facilities out there for different types of product, non-sterile products, in which that could be okay, depending on the room and its condition. But I wouldn't suggest it for anything that's related to production, formulation, those kinds of rooms. So I'm not sure. As an industry, I think, with understanding risk management principles, a lot of people sometimes take them too far and think, well, if it makes scientific sense, then, maybe I don't understand, what could go wrong yet, and I could give it a shot and then see what goes wrong. That's not a risk that I'm willing to take. And I
That's
don't know
exactly right.
if yeah, and I don't know if it's worth the time and effort for one room to be set different air exchange rates than another. But to each their own. And if they can defend it and support it and not get inspected to it, then I think it could make sense for certain products. But I don't think it makes sense for a majority of the pharma products that I'm comfortable with.
Okay. Good. Good.